Hi, I'm Paul Friedman from the Marriage Foundation. I founded it, and I'm the one who has discovered all of the principles and came up with systems and techniques for helping marriages. I don't think there's anything better out there than what I've come up with, honestly. And I don't mean to be bragging about that, but I used to be a divorce mediator, and I've seen the crazy ways people try to help marriages. This will help you. And this video is part 2 about anger in marriage. And it's purposeful. The reason for producing this video is so that you have some tools, so you have some understanding. But I urge you, if you stopped here first, go to part 1. Because without part 1, part 2, it's not as effective. So we talked about what anger is, how it is the instinctive reaction that is fear-based, and it's in response to something that the mind considers to be fearful. So there are really 2 parts to this. Part 2. One part is dealing with the anger within yourself, and the other is dealing with the anger in your spouse and what to do about it. So, which one do you like to deal with first? How about we deal with if your spouse is angry? So you have to understand something. When your spouse is angry, it doesn't matter what caused it. You will never get to the bottom of it, and if you do, it's meaningless anyway. Why? Because the subconscious mind is filled with so many webs of interactions and cause and effect that to isolate a particular reaction, we'll call this a reaction, to isolate it in terms of why is beyond impossible. A supercomputer can't do it. You know, it could be that the fear, because that's what causes the anger, fear, that the fear is based on some trivial thing that occurred as a baby. Or who knows, maybe a past life. We don't know. We don't know all of the intricacies of the mind and why it perceives something as scary. We don't know. All we can deal with is this anger reaction. Bam. And again, it comes up in so many different ways. And I'm going to tell you something. If you've never dealt with anger within yourself, you're lying to me. All of us do. We do because it is instinctive. So when we see it in someone else, the number one rule, is do not, you know what I'm going to say here? Do not take it personally. Do not take it personally. It's not about you. Sure, something that you have done maybe is triggering something in here, or maybe not. Maybe it's just something you did that reminded your spouse of something. So do not take it personally. Now, that's not always easy, is it? However, if you love your spouse, and you do, now is the time for you, as their best friend, to shift your perspective from the recipient of their anger. Even if it's triggering your anger, just stop that and shift to compassion and understanding. And what are you understanding? You don't have to understand all this nonsense. Because it's nonsense to you, it's nonsense to them too. You have to understand this, that it's unintentional. Unintentional. Anger's not intentional. Nobody wants to be angry, because when you're angry, it shuts down everything else. You don't think anymore. It shuts down your ability to process, to analyze, to interact. Shuts everything down because it's your first parapet of defense. So you need to see that, because you're not going to be getting angry if they get angry if you keep your cool. So keep your cool. Shift and go here. And then you have to be ultra considerate. So number 2 is be considerate. What does that mean effectively? So these are the 2 things. Do not take it personally and be considerate. So what does that mean? So if somebody burned their finger and you're talking to them and you want to shake hands and you see their finger is burned, you don't do anything even like that. You don't shake their hands because you know it's going to hurt them. You're considerate of where they're at. Now maybe they were stupid and they burnt their finger doing something really stupid. Don't take it personally. They can't shake your hand. Be considerate. Be compassionate. Be understanding. It's a weakness. And you don't analyze them. You don't help them figure out why. Don't play Dr. Freud. You be a loving spouse who is merely considerate and give them the space to deal with their own anger. Boom. That's it. Now we go to part 2 of part 2, which is what happens when you feel angry. Okay? Because that's what I promised you, and I like to keep my promises. Because I'm not running for office. So I get to keep my promises. What do you do when you're angry? So, this is tricky. In the 90s, I decided, it was 1994, that I decided I'm going to conquer anger. I thought I'd had enough. And so I decided, this is my mind. I can control it. I'm not going to allow it to be angry anymore. This is using willpower. This is a way to conquer your anger, is using willpower. No, I won't. Yes, I will. It's one way. Some people are able to use their willpower and stop being angry. Not me. Number 2, you use a workaround. Now, I didn't invent the term workaround, but I think I invented the application. So what's a workaround? A workaround is you're triggered, okay? And you could look into my stuff and you'll learn about what that means. But basically the mind has all of these triggers. And the triggers create a response in your mind due to habit. So a workaround is recognizing I'm getting angry. I'm going to instead make my mind think about this. I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to practice what we used before. I'm going to practice understanding. Rather than getting angry at what is happening, I'm going to practice understanding. Or I'm going to use an affirmation. And that's what I'm going to do. Workarounds are really good. But there's a better way. I found 3 ways. And this is called, I didn't invent this one at all, okay? This was actually invented by Patanjali, who was an Indian saint. And this one is holy indifference. And it's funny how I discovered this, because what I did was I came up with these two. I bumped into an old monk friend of mine, and I was so excited. I said, "Brother, look what I came up with." And he goes, He was Swiss. He went, "Holy indifference." And I thought, wow, that is very cool. What's holy indifference? Holy indifference is that you don't take yourself seriously. That's a simple way to put it. You don't care because you're a soul. Remember we talked about the soul in the previous video? You're a soul. So it really doesn't matter, because a soul can't die, can't be burned, drowned, anything. A soul is a soul. It's a universal consciousness of love. So holy indifference is kind of using the workaround to be indifferent to anything that it might happen. And what it does is it mitigates the impact on the triggers. Now, that didn't work for me either. Things got better, but I never conquered anger. What finally happened for me was very interesting. It's after I was a divorce mediator for a while, and then I became a marriage healer. And I realized that my clients, as well as they knew they shouldn't get angry, but even like smaller things, they shouldn't say something, they shouldn't do something, and they couldn't. And they'd come to me and say, "Man, I know what's right, and I can't do what's right, and I can't stop myself from doing what's wrong." And I thought, wow, this is a universal problem. So what I did was I dug into this, and I realized that what drives virtually all of our behavior is either instinct or habit. We're sort of, if you look at it truly, we're sort of automatons. We hardly ever use free will, which is like one of the greatest gifts given to us as individual souls. No, we're driven by instinct and habit. And I thought, how do you deal with this? So it came to me, and I invented this thing called the SO technique. Now, there's good news and bad news here. The good news is it's really simple. The bad news is I'm going to tell you about it. You're going to try it. You're going to be using it for a little while. Then it can't use it anymore. It won't work. And I'll explain that. But first, let's get into what it is. So is stop. Just stop the mind. Just bam, just stop the mind. As soon as you feel that charge, because it's all electrical, right? Our bodies are electrical. Really. If you had a special microscope where you could see that small, you wouldn't see any mass at all. You would see protons, electrons, and all these things whizzing around. We're all electrical. And so the energy moving that's hitting our triggers and all of that, it's all electrical. So as soon as you feel it, it's distinct. You feel the anger coming up, stop. And you have that power. Then evaluate. What should I do? And act with wisdom. Pretty simple, right? So cool. Now, the problem is the mind is complex. And I'm not going to spend this whole video time explaining to you why, but you could trust me on this. You tell your mind, oh, we're going to use, because you can talk to your mind. I talk to my mind all the time, and you wouldn't want to be around. Sometimes I swear at it. And I go, look, mind, we're going to use this SO technique from now on. This is brilliant, and it's effective. And the mind's going to go, sure. But it won't. It'll do it for a little while, and then it'll quit. So the simple antidote for this, I put it in my course. I have these courses, I have books, but the course is so powerful. I created this anatomy of a fight class, about 3 videos long, and it explains the mind in so much detail. And when you watch it over and over, it sinks in. And now the mind knows how the mind works. Then it could do the so. Until then, it can't. So I'm sure there's some people who will use the so from now on. Great. I couldn't. So I couldn't conquer this anger for 10 years. Then I did the so. Bam! Just took care of it. It is like the solution. And who knows, someday we'll do anger management courses for people, and this is how we'll achieve it. Because managing anger, forget about it. You can't manage it. It's like managing a shark. It's too powerful. It's too powerful. It's either out of your control or under your control. This puts it under your control. So this is what you do for yourself. Got it? So now you know what to do when your spouse, right? You don't take it personally and you be considerate. And now you know what to do when it's your anger. You stop, evaluate, and act with wisdom. And that's it. See how simple life is? No big deal. And see how well it will impact your marriage in such a positive, loving way. So if you like what I'm talking about, let people know, share it. Subscribe to more of my videos. I love sharing this stuff with you. And that's it. Thank you very much for staying tuned. And remember, the Marriage Foundation is here for one purpose, and that's to serve you and your marriage. Okay, take care.